And let's talk about this, because I think this is the main question about this defense, the defensive line. And it's not the edges, it's the interior. So, Gerald, my question to you is, who is going to be the starting defensive tackles for this Texas Longhorns team?
My hot take is that person might not be on campus yet. I think Texas may, depending on what we still don't know what spring practice is going to be, right? But Texas has already gone into the portal like 3 times. I think they've got Beverly Shaw and then the kid from Ohio State that came in. So might be one of those 3 guys. I mean, Texas went and did a very solid job of creating a platoon of guys last year. And then, Alfred Collins and Vernon Broughton just decided to make that jump. And that's my favorite new game to play is like, how is Texas going to replace these 2 guys on the defensive line and then 2 guys just step up and have career years? So, I mean, I would be shocked if it wasn't one of those 3 transfer guys, but also Justice Terry is coming to campus and he's a big son of a gun. There's no other way to say it. He's coming in. Alex January is another kid that I think could have a big jump from year to year. He's already got the size 6'5", 320, I think 320, 325, something like that coming in. So he's got the body, he's got the type. And again, Texas has seen Kenny Baker really do some wonders this last offseason. We didn't know who was going to replace Tavondre Sweat and Byron Murphy. 2 guys that have been on campus for 4 years had massive jumps in their final years. And so I wonder if Alex January, maybe Melvin Hills is another guy who, he was a hot commodity around the SEC. There's a reason why basically every SEC program wanted him. So to answer your question, probably if I had to put a fine point on it, probably Brevard and Shaw, I think would probably be my 1 and 2. But I wouldn't be shocked to see if Alex January has a big jump this offseason.
No, I don't disagree with that. And I actually don't disagree with your initial take. Like, I think someone will jump in that spring portal window and Texas will be all over that person, whoever that may be. We don't have any insight on that as of now. I think that's a little bit too early to speculate. Listen, about 2 weeks before transfer portal hits in the spring, you're going to know some names just because there'll be guys probably linked that were from the state of Texas. That's usually how that works. So we'll have to see what that is. But yeah, Hero Canoe, Travis Shaw, Cole Brevard, all transfers. And get this, this is crazy just looking at this room, because if the transfer portal does not exist, that's 3 transfers. Then you bring in 3 freshmen. You had 2 guys. I repeat, you had 2 guys on the roster if you get rid of freshmen and transfers. You had Alex January and, like you said, Melvin Hills. That is it. So we were saved by the transfer portal. I don't like having to do that. I think this is the only position on the team really where they kind of had to get desperate. I'm going to be straight up honest about that. Like, I like the guys we got, but they were going to have to take whoever jumped into the portal, because you couldn't go in with 5 guys at that position. You can't do that. So I like the guys. I don't disagree with that. I think Travis Shaw by far has the highest upside of anyone brought in. I don't think it's close. There's a reason this guy was a 5-star coming out of high school. Yeah. And he's like the first big time guy we've ever gotten from the state of North Carolina too. Like, if you look at that, there's not many guys state of North Carolina for football that we go in and get. He's the biggest guy we've gotten. So hopefully he pans out and we start giving a pipeline there, because they're starting to get better at football as well in that state.
Yeah. And Mac Brown leaving that state, it's curious to see what Bill Belichick will do recruiting in state. But if Texas can continue to make those inroads, it'll definitely pay dividends.
No, 100%. And I'm a big fan of Alex January, because I'm a big fan of what we're going to hear during this spring. Guys, the name that was constantly said during the spring of last year was Alex January. It was like, wow, this guy can play a little bit. This guy can play a little bit. He didn't play as much as I thought he was going to personally play after hearing that, but he did play. At the end of the season, they started to rely on him a little bit more.
And I think that was probably a function of Broughton and Collins playing better than we anticipated. I don't think it was a January thing. I think it's just like those 2 guys finally lived up to the billing. And I think that, again, Alex January is a guy who I really want to see make a big jump. He's already got the size. He's already got, go watch his high school tape. He's one of those dudes you're like, God, it's unfair that somebody had to go to calculus and then have to try to block this guy. It's just completely unfair.
Yeah, 100%. Melvin Hills is definitely a little bit more raw. Like you said, it's a good prospect, a little bit more raw. And then guys coming in, Justice Terry, Myron Charles, which he could play inside or outside. I think he's at that point. We're going to know when the roster comes out, just look at the weight on him. Yeah. If he got skinnier, he's going to play edge. If he got bigger, he's going to play defensive tackle. That's pretty simple. And I think he can be a good player.
And I would be shocked if they didn't try to bulk him up. Granted, you have to see where his body goes and how he play, like how his body adjusts to it. But with what Texas has in the defensive end edge room versus what Texas has in the interior room, I would be shocked if they didn't say, "Hey, have a peanut butter sandwich before you go to bed and come to practice in the morning."
Yeah, and then this guy, I'm all in on. I saw the picture, and Josiah Sharma's my dude. Like, I see that guy
boy.
with the widest shoulders I've ever seen on any human being. Like, those are Olympic bodybuilding type shoulders. They're just wide as hell. You know what that reminded me of? If anyone wants to go back and look at young Dwight Howard, like those type of shoulders. Like, I've never seen anything like it.
Set him up with an NIL deal just to rent out the space between his shoulders as some sort of billboard. Like just the body on that kid is ridiculous.
Yeah, so I'm a big fan. If he can put on some healthy weight, I could see him playing pretty quickly. I think Justice Terry's in that same mold as well. He's got a pretty good body that can put on a lot of weight, and obviously he's got a very, very high ceiling. I don't know about the floor about him right now, but the ceiling is super high. But Josiah Sharma is one of the underrated guys in this class that I think you're going to see play a lot more than you think. And I would agree. Right now, Travis Shaw to me is going to start for this football team. I don't know who that other guy is going to be. If I had to guess, I think actually Justice Terry's going to start. I just have a feeling they're going to throw him in and allow him to learn on the job. And we see this every year with Texas. There's always that one guy as a freshman that plays a lot. Anthony Hill a couple years ago played a lot as a freshman, played well. You saw last year, you saw Colin Simmons and also Ryan Wingo, especially down the stretch, got a lot more run. I think you're going to see that from Justice Terry. And I think because of the lack of depth at this position, you're going to have to see it earlier from him.
Yeah, I think there's probably a world in which you play the transfer guys earlier, and then as Terry, January, the rest of these young cats, because it's going to be a speed of the game thing for them, especially at defensive line. I'm going to be like, nobody listening or watching this is going to be shocked by this, but what high school offensive lines are doing versus what college offensive lines are going to be doing to that guy, going to be vastly different. So letting him get his feet underneath him, I think, and especially outside of Ohio State, Texas's non-conference schedule gives you a little bit of opportunity to get closer to the speed of the game and adjust with it. Again, we don't know what Ohio State's going to be. They're still going to be Ohio State, but like giving Texas the opportunity in week 2, not in week 1, right, to slowly bring a guy up to speed is going to be a big advantage for him.
No, I agree. I think it'll be slow, but that's definitely the biggest question mark on the defensive line and probably honestly on the team. I think the two biggest are tied in interior defensive line. Let's jump out to me. I think this might be the strongest group on the whole entire team, and that's the edge position. Ethan Burke, Colton Vosick, Colin Simmons, Trey Moore, Zena Umulazulu, who I think is going to play a lot more this year. That guy has the body type for it now. Smith Orogbo and Lance Jackson, which are both top 10 at their positions coming in. I think Lance Jackson is either 1 or 2. What do you think of that group?
Yeah, my notes, I said, does Texas have the best defensive end room in the country? That's the start of my notes for this. And I think you're absolutely right. I mean, you start with Trey Moore and Colin Simmons, right, on opposite sides of that defense. And I'm going to be curious to see. It's going to be a pick your poison for a lot of offensive schemes. Like, who do you want to block? Because the other one is going to get off. Because we saw that happen later in the season when Colin Simmons started to come on and defenses started to focus more on him. That's when Trey Moore's production shot up as far as sacks go, right? And Trey Moore was the lunch pail guy all year. I'm going to blow up an option on my own kind of guy. And that's not Ethan Burke and Colton Vosick are two guys that incredible talents, incredible athletes. And I think on any other team, you're talking and you're waving the flag. Like, these two guys are incredible. They just happen to be on the field with Colin Simmons, who's a surefire NFL guy, and Trey Moore, who's got a ton of potential. And again, I think the defensive end room for Texas has an opportunity to be a differentiator. The SEC is going to be a very quarterback-heavy league next year, and so having the ability to get after the quarterback consistently takes a lot of pressure off of the rest of your defense, right? If Colin Simmons and Trey Moore are routinely winning one-on-ones on the outside, that creates numbers advantages for Texas. We saw it last night in the Super Bowl. If you can get pressure on a quarterback with minimal blitzing, the pendulum of advantage swings way in the direction, no matter how talented your quarterback is. If you can get pressure with 4 or 5 guys, then your advantage on defense is going to be massive. And so I think having these guys and being able to say, I think the biggest advantage Texas has is like being able to have healthy legs at the edge in the late third quarter and the fourth quarter, right? Because you play Trey Moore, you play Colin Simmons, and then guys like Burke and Vassick or some of these younger guys come in and they've got fresh legs and fresh bodies going against the offensive lineman that's been having to chase Colin Simmons for 45 minutes. Like that is something that I think we're going to see as an advantage for Texas moving down the season next year.
No, 100%. And I think the pitch for Trey Moore coming back was, they played him off ball a lot. I think the pitch this year was, hey, Colin Simmons is on the other side. You're going to get a lot more sacks this year. We're going to let you put your hand in the dirt a little bit more. And I think a guy that we could have put in this group is Brad Spence. I think Brad Spence is actually going to be the guy that takes more of the Trey Moore role where he plays a little bit of both. I think they're going to say to Trey Moore, hey, put your hand in the dirt a lot more, get after the quarterback. And you got Colin Simmons on the other side. And heck, if he wants to sub out, then you put Colton Vosick in or Ethan Burke or whoever. Like this position group is literally like 5 to 6 deep of guys that I trust. Like if they started a game, I'd be perfectly fine if they started a football game, which is insane. Texas has not had that probably ever, honestly, that deep. I think they've had deep classes, but they've never had it this deep.
No, I mean, Texas has had really talented, like flashes of defensive ends. I think you think of Brian Arakpo, you think of Brian Robinson, Sergio Kindle, right? That group in the early 2000s, right? But like they've never. This is legitimately 6 or 7 deep at the edge position. It's absolutely ridiculous, and we've got Colin Simmons for another. Not just like we're talking about this in linebackers, right? Anthony Hill's probably gone after next year, right? But like getting Colin Simmons at this level of production for 2 more years, like Texas fans, we are spoiled at the edge position, and it feels good to finally be able to say that.
Okay, so I got to put you on the spot. I want you to answer 2 questions, I guess. Whole career, and then right now, who do you like more, Smith-Orogba or Lance Jackson?
Woo. I think right now Lance Jackson is my answer. Like, dude just came on campus and looked the part. Like he fit right. He was there for the playoff run on the sidelines, and you couldn't pick him out, right? In a good way. You couldn't pick him out of the lineup because he just looked like he had the goods. He is a stud. If he is anything like his brother has been at Arkansas, right, he's going to be incredible. I further career is tough because I like where Lance Jackson is now, but I think Smith-Orogba, if he can grow out of the puppy stage, I think he has an opportunity to be an all-timer at the edge. But again, I think where Lance Jackson starts his career gives him a little bit of a bump. So I think I'm struggling to put a fine point on this, but I think right now Lance Jackson, I think long-term, Smith-Orogba has a really high ceiling.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I think Smith-Orogba, I think he's like 6'3", 215. Super good athlete. He's very bendy and twitchy, which is you like at the obviously the edge.
Long arms too.
Yeah, super long arms. Like I think something like crazy, like a 6'10" or 6'11" wingspan. So that's insane for his size. So he's a freak, and he hasn't even been playing football that long. I think he's been playing football for like 4 or 5 years, even if that. So I really like him long term. I agree. I don't think he's going to play very much this year. I think they're going to like the person I think of is Ty Anthony Smith. Ty Anthony Smith kind of has that body type and build, and he really didn't play that much. He played on special teams. I think that's what you're going to see from Smith-Orogba. I think they'll put him in versus lesser teams and allow him to put his hand in there. But you're not going to see him versus Ohio State. You're probably not going to see him versus Florida versus an Oklahoma. I just think right now he'd probably get physically dominated. And you don't want to, like, you can ruin someone like that. You throw him out there, and then, he starts questioning himself, and you never want to be in that position. And guess what? We don't have to put him in that position. We don't need him to play. He could literally not play at all this year, and we'd be perfectly fine. But I love him long term.
Yeah, I think he has got. I mean, the word freak probably needs to like be gone from our vocabularies, but like that is the only thing I can describe it as, like just the physicality, the body type, the mold. Like I really am excited to see what he develops into, because he could be a lot of things for Texas. I mean, whether he's standing up, whether he's putting his hand in the dirt, like the dude has all of the physical advantages that he needs. And so once he gets in the strength and conditioning program, when he gets a good college nutrition program on him, I'm excited to see what he develops into, because he could absolutely just be the prototype of what you want at a defensive end.
Yeah, and guess what? If he doesn't work at edge, like he doesn't have great pass rushing skills, I think DeMarvion Overshown is someone he could be. Like he's got that type of athleticism and versatility, and honestly body type. So he's just a freak athlete. You got to find how to use him, and I'm sure they will. They've done a great job of that on staff, so I have no questions about how they'll do that. So that is the defensive line battle. We're going to get into the